Having trouble figuring out how to advance the slide. I don't know why. All right, there we go. Again, hello and welcome. My name is Lindsay Stevens, and I am the Director of Teacher Leadership and Learning at the Center for Strengthening the Teaching Profession. We have some other panelists on with us today. Nasue, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Nasue Nishida, also with C-STEP, working with Lindsay and the PESB and Bloom Board on this exciting Micro-Credential cohort that we're starting. And we're really excited to have you hear about this work happening in the spring and hopefully some interest in jumping into the cohort. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. We also have Ed from Bloom Board. Hi, Ed. Would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Ed Vandenberg, Senior Learning Strategist at Bloom Board. Excited to be continuing our partnership with C-STEP and Washington PESB on these RWT micro-credentials.
All right. Thank you. We also have Marin here, and she can go ahead and introduce herself.
Sure. I'm Maureen Johnson with the Professional Educator Standards Board, PESB. I'm the Educator Preparation and Credentialing Policy Lead, and we are just thrilled to be working with C-STEP and Bloom Board this spring, and excited to be continuing our work on recruiting Washington teachers and on micro-credentials.
And that is totally my typo where it says Professional Educator Service District, because I originally had Puget Sound Service District. I don't know why, and then I didn't clearly get the whole thing changed. So sorry, everyone. It is PESB, not Service District. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So if you are out there, we would love for you to use the chat function. You can introduce yourself, just say who you are, what your role is. You can just do a first name if you want, and kind of where you're located, just trying to get an idea of who's here from around the state.
And just to give a quick orientation, the chat should be on your menu bar. It shows up on the bottom of my screen. It could be somewhere else on your screen. And it does say chat, and it has like a little message box. It is not the Q&A. That one is a little more sophisticated than we're ready to do on this webinar, but it is the chat box.
All right, thank you, Nasue. All right, Kindergarten Spokane. Shannon, hi there. All right, Family Consumer Science. Concrete, nice. Oh, Everett, awesome. Genevieve. All right, I'm going to go ahead and begin. Olympia, all right. Mukilteo, great. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys continue to introduce yourselves to one another while we continue with our presentation. Okay, so the goals for our webinar this afternoon are really to get some information out there about the Recruiting Washington Teachers curriculum and program. It's a really exciting curriculum and program. I know that I was very excited when I was first introduced to it, so it's always fun to share that with others. Then to talk about the background of the RWT, so Recruiting Washington Teachers, professional development modules that were created, and talk about give you some information about the micro-credentials, specifically those for RWT. So Ed's going to kind of tell us what a micro-credential is, give us a little bit about that, and then we'll talk more about the specific ones for this program and how they line up with the professional development modules and the curriculum, and then we're going to give you information on how to join the upcoming cohort and what supports are available for you, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions. We'll save some time at the end. All right, so what is RWT? I'm not actually going to read this to you. I'm going to give you a moment to read it to yourself. All right, and I'm going to ask you to use the chat button again to go ahead and enter in any thoughts or what's exciting about this, or let us know kind of what stands out to you about this, just this quick paragraph about the curriculum before I tell you more. What sort of things stick out to you as you read this? Thanks, Nasway. All right, well, I can tell you what stood out for me the first time I saw this. And I really thought, especially as a high school teacher, the part of it being founded in equity pedagogy was really exciting for me. Also exploring cultural identity. I think that teachers in all levels and students, it's a really great thing to do, but I think a lot of times it's hard and we don't know how to address these things. So that's what I thought was really exciting about it. And Mara and Ed Nosway, feel free to chime in at any point if you would like about these things.
I think the dual goal of RWT of diversifying the educator profession while addressing the teacher shortage has something that's been powerful for many districts and individuals.
Yeah, and in my previous job as a area superintendent, one of the things we pushed for our group of schools was to have the teachers, the future teachers, be those people who are currently going to the schools that we were working with. And in fact, would have loved to have a program like this set up.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ed. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there is a graphic out there that shows the background and ethnic background of teachers and then that of students in our state and compares how different they are. And so I always think it's exciting to get a more diverse cadre of teachers out there so that our students can aspire to become one of the many in the profession as well. One of the things that's super exciting about RWT is this piece. So for me as an educator, I think that some of those things can be daunting and make me nervous and things that I would not think that I could do or would, you know, be apprehensive about. But RWT is really great. It is this curriculum and it is made up of units and resources. It has guidance for districts or schools that are interested in starting their own teacher academy. There are implementation resources, and then there's also professional development for RWT teachers available online. So all of these things are there. It's there through the PESB website. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what those things are and how they're available to you. So in the curriculum, there are 6 units. You can see them here. There's healthy learning communities, culture and identity, equity and opportunity, equity pedagogy, college access, and then there's a practicum unit as well. The thing that's really cool about this is when I look at this, I think that this is something that I would have loved to have had coming out of school, pre-service, when I first started teaching, or even just a couple years ago when I was in the classroom. I think that these are things that we're starting to grapple with, and it's so important. So I think it's really exciting to think that you are teaching these units to high school students in the classroom, but it's also exciting to know that this is kind of out there for everyone. And each unit does have all of these pieces with it. So there's healthy learning. This is the Healthy Learning Communities graphic organizer. And I just grabbed a shot so you could see sort of how all encompassing it is. So it's not just kind of a, here's how you do this, figure it out sort of. It's got these outlines and graphic organizers. They've got lesson plans in them. They have kind of your essential questions, your exit tickets, things that you can do. And if you look closely, there are links to the resources embedded in these lesson plans. So you can link to it, you can get the handout for the students, you can get a lesson plan for yourself. It just kind of depends on what's there and what the resource is, and you can sort the resources and try to find certain resources for certain topics, but it's all there. So it's really helpful for teachers. They're all aligned with competencies. So each unit has competencies and it has essential questions. Each unit has an opening page that talks about the desired results of that unit, and they are stated in what students will understand, what students will be able to do, and what students will know. And then there are performance-based assessments at the bottom of each one. So these units are really meaty and thorough, and just some of the best kind of open source, great topic resources I've seen out there. It's all on the PESB website. It's really, really terrific. There was, so the keys to implementation of this curriculum for these units is that there really needs to be recruitment, and actually recruitment of two different areas. So first, recruitment of that teacher. So you want that kid magnet, that teacher who's going to get in there and counsel kids and see these systems and be able to really pull those kids in who are going to want to spend the time that it takes to really delve into these topics. You also want to recruit those kids. You want to recruit those kids that are going to grow up to be the kid magnets. So you really want the kids that you can see in their community and who care a lot about their community and maybe wouldn't have thought about teaching as an option until they get that shoulder tap from a teacher they look up to. So the recruitment piece is really important. The course topics also are a key to implementation. The course topics are really important, but they also can make some teachers feel insecure or feel like they don't know how to handle them. They're those important topics that we have passion for, but because of that, I think sometimes teachers can be intimidated by them. You also have to have strong systems. So the system that it takes to be able to, yes, do this curriculum and teach these topics in your classroom, but also figure out how to get your students to elementary schools to do practicums, and how do I get partnerships with the different levels of systems in my district. So maybe I need to talk about transportation, or maybe I need to figure out how to have administrators support these pieces, or how do I get the counselors involved in enrolling the right kids in these classes. So that system is very important. And then there's also partnerships. So one of the keys to a really successful implementation of an RWT program that we have seen has been partnerships with community and with universities outside of the school or the district that this is taking place in. So lots of partnerships with different universities around the area and how to set those up. So because those are the keys to implementation, they also can become the challenges to implementation. They're not things that just come easily. They take a lot of work. But what's really great is that PESB has created support for these implementations. So if I'm that teacher and I'm a little bit weary, but I'm that kid magnet, there are professional development modules that were created. So PESB worked with C-STEP to create these online professional development modules through Canvas. And so you can go in and take them. It's just activities that you can do yourself. They're really great, rich resources. We got teachers together from around the state to put those together. So it was teachers doing the research, finding what was helpful, writing the professional development modules to make them usable and kind of teacher-friendly for others. There's also a page that is guidance from the PESB and how to sort of set up those systems. So if I'm someone at a district office or the administration level or a counselor or the teacher who wants to reach out to these people, there's a whole web page about guidance for setting up that program. And then there are also resources. There's a whole page of resources, of places to reach out to, partnerships to get started, different letters you could send, all sorts of things that can help you set these up. So they've really done a great job of saying, you know, this is important to us, so what are the keys and how do we overcome those if those keys to success become challenges? And so that is a little bit, I'm going to go back a second, that is a little bit about just what this curriculum is. So it's rich resources and professional development for teachers who are going to get involved with recruiting Washington teachers and some academy courses in high schools. So now the other piece, recruiting Washington teachers, is micro-credentials. So I'm going to let Ed tell you a little bit about micro-credentials.
Thank you, Lindsay. So if you can imagine these rich resources there to support you, and moving from strictly inputs to actually outputs. And that's what a micro-credential is all about. All micro-credentials are an opportunity for you to demonstrate your competency in a specific skill. All Bloomboard micro-credentials have three key components. You will see in every Bloomboard micro-credential, description of the skill, the requirements for proving competency of that skill, and lastly, a performance rubric for each requirement inside the micro-credential. So we will get into this a little further in terms of understanding what a micro-credential is. I think it takes a few times to really understand. So that's just the basis. And if we can go to the next slide, Lindsay. So some things that a micro-credential, they are not, and what they are that might help you understand a little bit more. So excuse me, micro-credentials are not a course. That's in fact one of those dead words that I had a dead word wall in my classroom, and that's one of the dead words in the micro-credential world. And so, you know, with a course, you're going to have specific assignments you need to complete, and typically places you need to be at a certain time. It's not just a PD workshop, although we love PD workshops and they are supportive, and just like all the rich resources that are available for you, it is not just a PD workshop, and it is not a traditional test. In fact, micro-credentials are replacing traditional tests for certain certifications across the country, because what's most important is that you show your competency. So what they are is that micro-credentials are job embedded and on demand. You work on it online at your own time. You basically collect a portfolio of evidence that shows your competency. And one of the things that we know that works in terms of helping people understand what a micro-credential is that it's similar to earning a driver's license. So you can go on to the next one. So when you earn your driver's license, you learn and practice at your own pace, in your own way. Most of us, you know, had an adult in the car with us. Some of us actually read the manual to understand how to drive. Some took, you know, driving courses at your local high school. But it doesn't matter how you learn and practice. What really matters is that you demonstrate that competency to earn the driver's license. So you have to, at some point, get in the car and drive the car and do the different things to earn that license. And somebody you don't know is going to be assessing your competence. And if you don't have that competence just yet, the assessor is going to tell you, hey, you still need to work on parallel parking or whatever it is you might need to work on. You go back to the drawing board, practice some more, and come back again and until you earn that. And it's exactly the same way with a micro-credential. It is competency-based. You're going to collect that portfolio of evidence. It's really clear what that portfolio of evidence is that you need to collect. It's also really clear what the assessment is going to be. The rubric's right there for you. So it's not guesswork. And you will get feedback from an assessor who's been certified as an assessor. You'll get that feedback. And if you earn the micro-credential the first time you submit your evidence, great, fantastic. If you don't, that's absolutely okay as well. You're given some constructive feedback. Go back to the drawing board and resubmit additional evidence.
Awesome. I'd like to chime in just for a second on this one too. I kind of see that first line there, the dotted line, and I think the great thing about this cohort is that we are going to offer some more support. So hopefully you're getting some feedback from facilitators before you go on to demonstrate competency the first time. In a traditional micro-credential, you wouldn't necessarily have that same level of support. So that's one of the things that we're offering in the cohort is more guided support, more facilitation, more feedback along the route. So that's one of the things I'm really excited about this particular opportunity for. Okay. Ed, did you want to talk about this one? Or do you?
Sure. So just some of the things behind our micro-credentials. As you go along from left to right here, the cycle of inquiry is how the micro-credential is designed. It's designed using the ADDIE model. So you are always going to first analyze something. You're going to design or develop, in some cases, both design and develop. Then you're going to implement, and then you're going to evaluate. It's the cycle of inquiry that most educators are used to. So the micro-credential is designed in that way with the specific requirements. So you kick off, you'll have some job-embedded supports, just like Lindsay mentioned, which is a great support that's offered here that you can get feedback on your submission evidence before you submit, which is fantastic, and I highly recommend you do so. Through the process of that cycle of inquiry, you'll collect your portfolio of evidence, and then you will submit. Your submission evidence will be assessed, you'll get feedback, and at some point you will earn the micro-credential. So it has all the pieces right there for you to see.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, one piece I did forget, and that's just under the job embedded supports. Not only there's the feedback, excuse me, on your evidence, but also an opportunity to collaborate in the Bloomboard platform and ask questions and get support from the facilitator, but also from peers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, oops. So the RWT micro-credentials that have been developed, there are 3 options. So the first one is leveraging the RWT curriculum. And you can see that I've placed the 4 units that micro-credential addresses next to it. So in that micro-credential, you go in and you kind of take a look at all those lesson plans, kind of look at the outlines and decide if there's a spot or a lesson that you'd really like to hone in on and grow your skills. After you decide that, when you're ready, you go in and you do some research, and there are some research resources there. And so you basically kind of go out and do your own learning. You develop a lesson, you teach it to your class. So it's that ADDIE model. You're going to analyze it. You're going to develop it, your ideas, and then design. Then you'll implement your lesson, and then you'll evaluate how you did in your lesson. So it's very reflective, and it's not necessarily about those kid outcomes. It's a lot about you demonstrating your ability to kind of use that curriculum and to grow as an educator. It's a really fun way to look at the curriculum and a great way to learn. And again, I think this would be a great one for anyone who is teaching students. And I would say students of any age. We've had some success with someone who took one of the lessons and modified it for their, I think it was a 3rd or 4th grade classroom, and it was a really great lesson. And so these are lessons that you could modify and teach or learn more about, and maybe that is what you're designing or developing, is a different way of doing the same thing for a different audience. So I actually think that you would not need to be a high school teacher or even an academy teacher to do that one. I think anyone who would like to work with students, that would be a great micro-credential. Then the next one is Pathways to Becoming a Teacher. And this one's really about that college access piece. And it's about helping students plan a pathway, a personal pathway onto college. So taking a look at what they've done and what they need to do before they graduate. So that one is kind of for the educator who is working with the upper level kids and thinking about what their next steps are. And then there's developing RWT systems. And this micro-credential, I think, would be great for anyone, anywhere in the system. So this is where it'd be really great to have a counselor or an administrator, either at the district office or in a building. You might have someone who's doing curriculum development, anyone who really wants to see that systems perspective and making those partnerships and leveraging them. So this would be someone who's going to support the work with the students, but might not be doing that work one-on-one with the students. So we've sort of made it through these 3 micro-credentials that we're addressing all 6 of the units in the curriculum and those professional development modules. So the benefits of the cohort. So I guess this is sort of the why would I do this as opposed to just going in and looking at the modules, or why would I do this if I could just do it later on my own. But really the cohort benefits is that we're going to offer personal support during this cohort. We really want to see, given the right supports, how successful this can be. So we really want people to be out there digging in. You know, I know that all of us are very passionate about this curriculum and want to see it spread. And I really feel strongly that any educator who even takes 5 minutes to look at it, it will be excited. It's just that good. You're also going to have cohort support. So you'll be able to get on with one another. So say that you choose the leveraging RWT curriculum and you really are thinking, oh gosh, I would like to talk to someone about how they're expressing this part, or what their reflection might include, or do they think that I should tweak this or do that? Someone who's also experiencing it. So you'll be able to be in a cohort with people who are doing the same micro-credential. We could also, depending on what people apply for, put people into cohorts. You know, in a wonderful world, we might have a school and that has their academy teacher and then a counselor and then also, you know, the CTE director, and the CTE director is doing the systems one and the counselor is doing the career pathway one and sitting down with students and helping them with that, and then the academy teacher is doing the curriculum one. So that would be sort of my dream, and that may happen, but if not, it doesn't matter. We've sort of made it so that you can come in either by yourself or with a team, and we're going to make sure that you are supported and connected. We're also going to have open office hours. So I will have some open office hours at least weekly, and what will happen is I will just have a Zoom open and I will be sitting there, and you can hop on and ask a question. And what we're going to do is once people apply and have been selected, then we'll do a little bit of surveying to figure out what times are best. You know, when are people thinking, I really wish I could get some direct feedback on this right now. And so we'll be careful to plan those when they work for you. We're also offering feedback before submission, so you can take examples of your work, drafts of your work, and get feedback before you do that. So when we have done other iterations of this, we have found that the more our participants used the feedback and the facilitator, the more successful they were in submitting the first time. So it sort of saved them time in the beginning, or they used time in the beginning to save them time in the end. So really making sure that you're using that feedback really makes it more likely that you'll have a more successful first submission. You'll also get feedback if a resubmission is needed. And you know, sometimes it really is, and that's okay. I think that's one of the things that I also love about the micro-credentials is that it's very iterative, and you're sort of encouraged to just give it a try. And if it's not successful the first time, it's that learning process of, oh, okay, I'm going to get some feedback and I'm going to make a small tweak, I'll make some adjustments, and then I'm going to resubmit and get my badge. And no one records that. We're not going to take the badge and say, you know, 2 times. It doesn't matter. You still get the badge. It's, you know, worth the same. And so that's really exciting, is that it's really about learning and growing and not about kind of the perfection or, you know, showing what a great teacher I am by the first time. That's not really what it's about. It's about learning together. We're also offering 20 free clock hours upon submission. So that's, a really great benefit. We need them these days, and, these are free, and we will be getting those out to you.
Lindsay, can I jump in real quick?
Please.
So Lindsay mentioned, and I just want to reiterate for everybody, we have gone through two kind of submission windows since these micro-credentials have come out, these RWT micro-credentials. And one of the things that we have learned is that people do need more support than what we initially had anticipated. Not that that's bad, it's just that because micro-credentials are so new to our state, we just need to feel this process out. So that is really the benefits of a cohort are things that C-STEP has learned through other kind of cohort models that we've used in our state. If you are familiar with National Board, if you are familiar back in kind of the old days of the pro-cert cohorts, it is the same kind of ideas, but very much based in an online, you can be anywhere in our state kind of model in order to do this kind of support. So we are pulling from what we feel are best practices in some ways that we've done these kind of cohort models before. And we do, in some ways we're exploring how these kinds of benefits will work with a micro-credential program like this. So this cohort is exploratory in some ways, and we are anticipating that people will likely have more first-time success than we have seen in the last two windows in the last year since these micro-credentials have been out. So just a little bit of explanation. This didn't just come out of thin air. We have been looking at this issue for about a year now.
Yeah, thank you, Nosley.
And excuse me, Lindsay, if I could jump in for a moment as well.
Yes, please.
So at Bloomboard, we have, over the last year, looked at over 7,000 submissions, excuse me, for micro-credentials. And one of the things that we clearly see is that an educator can get off to a sort of off-track start in the analyze requirement. Not always, but sometimes that happens. And when that happens, all the work you do in that cycle of inquiry then is off. And it's a great thing that C-STEP is offering this opportunity for you to get feedback on that analyze requirement, on your evidence, to make sure you're going in the right direction. So I highly recommend that you take advantage of that, because that is what we have seen very clearly, is that that's typically where people get off track and have a hard time getting back on track once they've gone down that path.
Thank you. Yes, okay. Okay, so here's sort of our timeline. So the application deadline to apply to be part of the cohort is February 27th. There is the link on the last slide, and we'll also send it out in an email. And so just pay attention to that deadline. Make sure you get your application in. March 5th, we're gonna have a cohort kickoff webinar. And so that one is where Ed's really going to help us take a look at the Bloomboard platform. It's really kind of snazzy. We've also been through a couple iterations of that, so it kind of gets more exciting every time I see it. And we're going to help you create a personal timeline. So we're going to talk about kind of when those open office hours are and what your timeline for completion might look like. I know that as teachers, we're super busy, and sometimes if we don't put things down in our calendar, they kind of fall off the top of our pile of things to do. So kind of helping people be really proactive about that. March through April is when you're really digging into the ad part of that ADDIE model. So you'll be doing your analysis, designing and developing those lessons or those systems or those plans. You'll really be doing the education and planning part. So this is when you'll want to get feedback on drafts. You can ask questions. Hopefully you'll be attending office hours, and then we'll help you to collaborate with others in that time. So those months are really where you're kind of getting in there and doing that gritty, heady work. April to May is when you will implement and evaluate. So you'll try out your lesson, you'll make a partnership plan and reach out to partners. You will sit with some students and talk about their pathways to college. So that's what you'll do in there. And then you'll evaluate the success of that implementation and reflect on your own learning. And again, during that time, we really want you to be getting feedback on those drafts, asking the questions, attending the office hours and collaborating with others. So those are the things that will help you along the way. So May 12th is going to be the first submission deadline. And really, that deadline is a great time for you to get things in before the end of the year and have time in case you need to resubmit. So June 5th will be the first resubmission deadline, and then June 30th will be a final resubmission deadline. So if there are still some things to be done or changes to be made. I don't know, Ed or Mara, do you want to say anything about those deadlines?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So our assessors typically in Bloomboard return things in 5 business days. So that is the goal. And why those submission deadlines are important is that you have to have, if you need to resubmit, you have to have some time between that first submission deadline and that resubmission deadline. And so with each deadline, you're basically allowed to move forward. So submit by May 12th. By submitting prior to or including May 12th, that gives you the next deadline to hit, which would be June 5th. And if you need to resubmit a second time, if you do so on June 5th, by June 5th, then you can resubmit again on June 30th. So it's basically, by hitting those deadlines, is giving you more and more time to earn that micro-credential.
Thank you. Okay, so here is the link for the cohort. It is rwtmcpilot.eventbrite.com. And like I said, we're going to send that out in the email to you, but I just wanted to have you see it up there. Everybody wants to scribble it down before we go on. And now we're just kind of here for questions. So open up the, oh, thank you. And also I put the link in there. There we go. Okay. I don't know if there are questions in the chat box.
I'm going to pull up a chat. Actually, Shannon brought up some good discussion about what kinds of credit students would be eligible for, and just the constraints around student schedules for credits. And I think the nice thing about RWT and this program is there's a lot of flexibility, and it is all context driven. So if this works best in a CTE, Family and Consumer Science connection, great. If it works well as an ELA, social studies, kind of humanities credit, great. If it's a pure elective that works the best, I mean, that might also be something that would work in some way. It's really going to be context specific for wherever you are. And I think that because there are financial implications to a program like this, those are all going to come into the equation as to how a district or a building is going to run this kind of work. So there's no real sure, fast way to do this. It's really going to depend on how that looks for you. Another question, before applying, could I contact someone to help me decide which route I should take? Absolutely. We will be giving you, if you sign up, more detailed information about the different 3 micro-credentials from which you're going to choose one. I would go back to something that Lindsay said earlier, which is if you are a teacher, probably the micro-credential that's going to be best suited to you is the one on the curriculum, where you're going to pick one of the 4 units and kind of dive deep into it. However, you could do the one on the pathways, so really looking at how students are going to transition from opportunities, thinking about teaching or thinking about education as a career pathway, moving into kind of their post-secondary exploration. That would be another good one for a teacher specifically. I think if you're an administrator, you're probably going to want to focus in on either the RWT systems one micro-credential, or even the pathways one would also work well.
And I would say, I'm going to put my email in the chat box here. You can always email me and ask some more personal questions or jump on a phone call or anything. Only do one.
Yeah, Genevieve or Genevieve, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name incorrectly. So can you only do one? For the purposes of this cohort, we want you to be successful by doing one. I think if you find that you can do more than one within the time that we've given for this particular cohort, we can certainly discuss that with you on more of a one-on-one basis. The other thing I would suggest for any of you that are very interested in this is it's always better to do this with a friend. So if you have a colleague that is interested in doing this, and the 2 of you actually might want to tag team and either do the same one or do one of you does one and another one does another, there will be overlap between the 2. It's always, it always makes it a little bit easier to have somebody that you know of that's kind of going through the same thing. So certainly we can talk about that, whether you are able to move and do more than one in this spring session. Any other questions? One thing I just want to kind of hit from earlier in the webinar is the real opportunity that this RWT program has to position itself as a way for districts or regions to really look at growing their own educator pool. And so if there is a vision, or if this is a, the teacher shortage stuff feels like it's come on real strong in the last few years, but you may be in a district or a context where this has always been a problem. It's not just the last few years. There have always been shortage areas or shortages in a certain field of teaching that you have needed in your district. You might really want to take this idea and look at how it could be visioned in your district or in your context to really seed kind of a grow your own model, so that students are getting early opportunities to think about the profession in a very positive way, in a way that takes their experiences from their own education and uses those as assets to the profession, and then really making the connections for their post-secondary pathway, whatever that may look like. And there's lots of different pathways now to get into teaching. So just something to think about is, you know, could this be a way of really funneling your district's own kind of little teacher pipeline, that you're kind of feeding your own system and hopefully shoring up an issue that may be longstanding in your region, not just the last few years, but could be something that's been a struggle for a while.
Thank you, Naswe. If we don't have any other questions, I think we can go ahead and sign off. I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for taking your time to be on this webinar. And if there are any other questions, please let us know. Any of us would be happy to speak with you. And we will be sending out a follow-up email that will have a link to the application and to this webinar. Anything else, Naswe?
Thanks, everyone. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you. Have a great evening.